The first sign wasn't the sirens, nor the distant flicker of orange against the night sky. It was the ash. It settled like malevolent snow, fine and gritty, coating everything in a sickly gray patina. Sarah Jenkins, her 38 years etched with the quiet wisdom of countless shift-end goodbyes and desperate battles for breath, found it first on the windshield of her decade-old Subaru. The morning sun, usually a crisp California gold, was a bruised, hazy orange, casting long, distorted shadows across the asphalt of the Pine Ridge Community Hospital parking lot. She ran a hand over the hood, the grit clinging to her fingers, a chilling premonition that tightened in her gut. This wasn't her first fire season. She'd seen enough of them to know the difference between a distant, contained burn and the hungry beast that was stirring. This one felt different. This one felt close. Inside, the hospital's fluorescent hum offered a temporary illusion of normalcy. Sarah, an ICU nurse for 15 years, moved through the sterile corridors with the practiced grace of someone whose every action was deliberate, purposeful. Her uniform, crisp and white, stood in stark contrast to the growing unease that permeated the air, like the acrid smell of ozone before a storm. The hospital was her second home, its patients her extended family. She knew the subtle dips in blood pressure, the faint, desperate wheeze that signaled impending crisis, the unspoken fears hidden behind a brave smile. Her first stop was room 312, where Mr. Arthur Abernathy, a man whose 78 years had seen him through 2 wars and a lifetime of farming, lay tethered to a mechanical ventilator. Mr. Abernathy, usually quick with a wry comment even in his intubated state, was silent this morning, his chest rising and falling with the rhythmic whoosh of the machine. Sarah checked his monitors, adjusted the saline drip, and gently smoothed the thin blanket over his frail form. His pneumonia had been aggressive, leaving his lungs scarred and fragile. Moving him, even a short distance, was a high-risk gamble. His entire existence was dictated by the precise calibration of tubes, wires, and air pressure. Any disruption, any deviation, could unravel him completely. "Morning, Mr. Abernathy," she murmured, her voice a soft hum of reassurance. "Just us against the world, eh?" Next door, in room 314, was Lily. A child of 7, her delicate body was an intricate map of slings and pulleys, a testament to the multi-car pileup that had shattered her femur and left her with a concussion that came and went like a fickle tide. Her small, pale face was framed by fiery red hair, a stark contrast to the pristine white of her bedsheets. A soft toy bunny, its ear chewed almost off, lay clutched in her hand. Lily was in skeletal traction. Pins had been surgically placed into her bone, and weights gently pulled at them to keep her leg aligned. Any sudden movement, any jolt, could dislodge a pin, cause excruciating pain, or, worse, irreversible damage. Sarah checked her vitals, spoke in soothing tones about her favorite cartoon, and gently adjusted a pulley that had shifted fractionally. Lily's eyes, wide and luminous, met Sarah's, a silent plea for protection. "We'll get you back on your feet, sweet pea," Sarah promised, the words feeling heavier than usual today. "Just a little longer." The break room, typically a sanctuary of shared grievances and caffeine-fueled camaraderie, was buzzing with a different kind of energy. The small television mounted in the corner, usually tuned to a cooking show, now blared grim updates. The Creek Fire, now estimated at over 30 acres, has jumped containment lines near the Tehachapi Pass and is moving rapidly towards populated areas, including the town of Pine Ridge. Mandatory evacuation orders are expected within the hour. A cold dread seeped into Sarah's bones. She'd heard the casual chatter about the fire all week, seen the smoke plumes on the horizon, but Pine Ridge was always safe, tucked away in its valley. Not today. Today felt different. As if on cue, a shadow fell over the doorway. Mark Chilton, the hospital administrator, stood there, a crisp suit and an air of perpetual irritation his usual uniform. Chilton was a man whose entire worldview revolved around budgets, metrics, and risk assessment. He was a master of PowerPoint presentations and a stranger to the human element of healthcare. "Nurse Jenkins," he began, his voice devoid of warmth. "A word, if you please." Sarah braced herself. Their interactions were rarely pleasant. "Yes, Mr. Chilton?" He gestured vaguely towards the window, where the sky had taken on an even more menacing blood-orange hue. "This fire situation, it's inconvenient. We have our quarterly compliance audit next week. I need to ensure all protocols are being meticulously followed." He tapped a manicured finger on his tablet. Speaking of which, the emergency generator, the one in the south wing. Your report last month indicated a minor fault. Has that been addressed? Sarah felt a flicker of exasperation. Mr. Chilton, the fault requires a part that's on backorder. It's a risk, especially with power fluctuations. And with this fire, it's not a minor fault, it's a critical vulnerability. Chilton waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. The primary grid is robust, and even if it weren't, we have redundancies. Your job, nurse, is to manage patient care, not to alarm staff with speculative doomsday scenarios. Focus on the upcoming audit, ensure your patient charts are pristine. He offered a thin, forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. We must maintain our professional image, even in challenging circumstances. The words felt like a slap. Professional image? As the air outside grew heavier, thicker with the scent of burning pine and distant despair, Chilton's priorities grated on Sarah's very soul. He clearly hadn't even bothered to glance at the news. The hospital's emergency plan, a thick binder of laminated pages, suddenly felt flimsy, inadequate. As Chilton turned to stride away, already absorbed in his next bureaucratic task, Sarah glanced back at the television. The reporter's face was grim. Officials warn that due to extreme winds and dry conditions, the fire is now moving at an unprecedented speed. Residents are urged to prepare for immediate evacuation. I repeat, immediate evacuation. Sarah felt the knot in her stomach tighten further. The beast was here, and Mark Chilton, with his pristine suit and spreadsheet-driven mind, was dangerously, catastrophically unprepared. The county's official evacuation order for Pine Ridge came precisely an hour later, a shrill, blaring siren cutting through the hospital's manufactured calm. The PA system crackled to life, its automated voice, usually reserved for mundane announcements, now echoing with urgent directives. Attention, all staff. Code Red has been declared. Initiate Phase 1 evacuation protocols. Repeat, Code Red, Phase 1 evacuation protocols. Suddenly, the hospital transformed. The quiet hum was replaced by a frantic symphony of movement and noise. Wheels squealed as gurneys were rushed down corridors. Nurses, doctors, and orderlies, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination, moved with a heightened urgency, their voices clipped but calm as they reassured anxious patients. Telephones rang incessantly, unanswered. The air, once merely thick with ash, now carried the unmistakable, acrid bite of smoke, seeping in through ventilation systems, turning the once clean air into a toxic haze. Sarah, her mind racing, immediately gravitated towards the ICU. Phase 1 was for ambulatory patients, then those who could be safely moved in wheelchairs. But the ICU, with its delicate ecosystem of life support, was different. She saw her colleagues, their faces pale under the harsh lights, beginning to disconnect IVs, readying patients for transport. Panic was a contagious force, but Sarah fought it down, focusing on the immediate needs of Mr. Abernathy and Lily. Their lives hung in a precarious balance, reliant on the precise functioning of their equipment. Just as she was double-checking Mr. Goat, Abernathy's ventilator settings, preparing for the inevitable, Mark Chilton materialized at the ICU entrance, flanked by a harried-looking head of nursing, Brenda, who usually handled the logistics. Chilton's face, usually composed, now showed a flicker of genuine stress, though it seemed more rooted in the disruption of his carefully ordered world than actual concern for lives. "Nurse Jenkins," he barked, his voice straining to be heard over the din. "What is the status of your critical patients?" The word critical sounded like an accusation in his mouth. "Mr. Abernathy requires continuous ventilation and precise environmental controls. Lily is in skeletal traction. Any jostling could cause catastrophic damage," Sarah explained, her voice steady, professional. "Both transports require highly specialized medical teams and equipment, more than a standard ambulance can provide. We need an advanced life support unit, at minimum, for Mr. Abernathy and a specially equipped transport for Lily that can maintain her traction without interruption." Chilton scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Nurse, we are in an emergency situation. Resources are stretched. We simply do not have time for bespoke transport solutions. The county is sending standard paramedic teams. We have to prioritize volume. A partial evacuation is a failed evacuation. The liability is astronomical if we leave patients here who could have been moved." His focus was on the numbers, the optics, the legal implications. Not on the fragile humanity lying in the beds. Brenda, usually mild-mannered, interjected cautiously. Mark, she's right. These aren't easy cases. A standard ambulance doesn't have the power converters for Mr. Abernathy's vent, let alone the space to stabilize Lily's traction. Chilton glared at Brenda, dismissing her concerns with a dismissive wave. We'll have to make do, Nurse Jenkins. Innovate. Adapt. That's what we do in an emergency. The paramedic teams are trained. They'll manage. We cannot afford to have patients remain. He checked his watch, a gold Rolex glinting under the emergency lights. Ambulance 7 will be here in 15 minutes for Mr. Abernathy. Ambulance 9 for Lily shortly after. Prepare them. That is an order. Sarah felt a cold dread spread through her. Mr. Chilton, that ambulance for Mr. Abernathy is a death sentence. The air quality alone will kill him on that transfer, never mind the lack of proper ventilation support. Nurse, Chilton's voice rose, edged with an authoritarian menace. You are being insubordinate. Your personal opinions are irrelevant. We have a protocol. We have a plan. You will follow it. Just then, the first paramedic team arrived, 2 young men, their faces grim and harried. They carried a standard gurney, clearly not equipped for the complex array of Mr. Abernathy's life support. Sarah looked at the gurney, then at the older paramedic's uncertain expression, and finally at Mr. Abernathy, whose shallow, labored breaths were a silent testament to his fragility. A wave of fury, cold and righteous, swept over her. This wasn't protocol. This was negligence. This wasn't an evacuation. It was a death march for the most vulnerable. She took a deep breath, her gaze locking onto Chilton's. I will not participate in negligent homicide disguised as an evacuation, Mr. Chilton. A stunned silence fell over the small group. The paramedics looked uncomfortable, caught in the middle. Chilton's mouth opened and closed, his face reddening with outrage. Excuse me, Nurse Jenkins? Do you understand the gravity of that statement? Do you understand what you are implying? I understand that Mr. Abernathy and Lily will not survive those transports, Sarah stated, her voice calm, unwavering. I understand that you are prioritizing paperwork and liability over human lives. And I understand that my license, my oath, and my conscience demand that I protect my patients. I am staying. Chilton's eyes narrowed, cold and hard. You are being insubordinate and reckless. You are abandoning your post. This is grounds for immediate termination, nurse. Not just your job, but your license. Your entire career. He was practically spitting the words. You will never work in this town, or any other again. Sarah didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, resolute. Then so be it. But these patients are not leaving this ICU without the proper care, and if that means I stay with them, then I stay. She turned her back on Chilton, walked purposefully to the ICU's heavy automatic doors, and, with a firm press of a button, activated the emergency lockdown. The doors slid shut with a soft hiss, a metallic thud echoing the finality of her decision. She heard Chilton's enraged roar from the other side, muffled but unmistakable. Jenkins, open this door! Open this door right now! She ignored him. The small, glass-walled room that was the nurse's station became her command center. 2 patients, a handful of essential supplies, and the escalating howl of the wind outside were now her entire world. She picked up the spare oxygen tank, connecting it to Mr. Abernathy's ventilator, double-checking the flow. She adjusted Lily's traction, ensuring every rope and pulley was perfectly aligned. She wasn't being reckless. She wasn't being insubordinate. She was being a nurse. And sometimes, she knew, being a nurse meant standing against the very system you were sworn to uphold, when that system failed those who needed it most. The battle for Pine Ridge had just begun, and the front lines were now drawn inside a single ICU. The hospital descended into a ghost ship, the last echoes of the evacuation fading into the growing roar of the approaching fire. Chilton's furious pounding on the ICU doors eventually ceased, replaced by the frantic ringing of his cell phone as he undoubtedly tried to marshal a response against Sarah's defiance. Sarah ignored the sound, the muffled shouts from the now empty corridor. She was hyper-focused on her patients, on the rhythmic whoosh of MrTimesalia.com, Abernathy's ventilator, the faint, reassuring beep of Lily's heart monitor. She had secured a basic walkie-talkie from a deserted supply closet before the full lockdown, a relic from an outdated emergency plan. It crackled to life, spewing static, but she could discern voices, snippets of communication from the outside world. It became her sole link, her fragile tether to what remained of order. The first official confrontation came 20 minutes later. A firm, authoritative knock echoed on the reinforced glass of the ICU doors. Sarah approached, seeing two figures silhouetted against the increasingly dim light of the corridor. One was a police officer, grim-faced, hand resting on his sidearm. The other, clad in a fire-resistant yellow jacket and helmet, was a woman. She exuded an aura of unyielding authority. Her name was Eva Rostova, fire marshal for Pine Ridge County. She was a woman who lived by regulations, by protocol, by the precise science of fire suppression and crisis management. Nurse Jenkins, Rostova's voice, amplified by the heavy doors, was sharp, devoid of any emotional inflection. "This is Fire Marshal Rostova. You are obstructing a lawful evacuation. You are endangering yourself, your patients, and my team. Open this door now." Sarah activated the walkie-talkie, pressing the transmit button. "Marshal Rostova, this is Nurse Jenkins. I have two critical patients here who cannot be safely evacuated with the resources provided. Opening this door for an inadequate transport is not saving them, it is signing their death certificates." A beat of silence. Then Rostova's voice, colder this time. "Nurse, your medical assessment, while noted, is irrelevant to the command structure. We have a fire bearing down on this facility. Every second we spend here arguing is a second my teams could be fighting the blaze or securing other civilians. You are creating a crisis within a crisis. And you are ignoring the critical needs of the most vulnerable?" Sarah countered, her voice rising slightly. "Mr. Abernathy is on a complex ventilator. Lily is in skeletal traction. The county's paramedic units are not equipped for this. You get me a fully equipped medical transport helicopter, capable of maintaining their life support and traction, and I will open this door." The police officer shifted uncomfortably. Rostova's helmeted head tilted slightly, as if assessing a strange, unpredictable variable. "We don't have the resources for a medevac, nurse. The air is too thick for flight. Visibility is zero. You are not in a position to make demands. This isn't a negotiation. This is an order. Open the door, or we will be forced to breach it." Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline, but she kept her voice level. "Breach it then, Marshal. But know that if you do, and anything happens to these patients in your inadequate transport, the blood will be on your hands. And on Mr. Chilton's." She could hear Rostova's frustrated sigh through the walkie-talkie. "Nurse, I understand you think you are doing the right thing, but your actions are misguided and dangerous. Think of the liability. Think of the legal ramifications for you." "I'm thinking of my patients, Marshal," Sarah responded simply, cutting the transmission. She didn't need to hear about liability, she knew her oath. The infuriating standoff continued for another agonizing hour. Through the walkie-talkie, Sarah could hear the increasingly frantic chatter of the fire teams. The wind howled outside, a predatory sound, rattling the windows. The air inside, despite the hospital's filtration, began to grow noticeably thicker, carrying a faint, unmistakable scent of burning rubber and plastic mixed with pine. Chilton's voice, surprisingly, crackled through Sarah's walkie-talkie, overridden by Rostova's command channel. He had clearly acquired his own radio. "Marshal Rostova, this is Chilton. This woman is unstable. She has a history of emotional outbursts. She is unfit for duty. Do not listen to her demands. She is putting everyone at risk. We need to bring her out forcibly if necessary, for the safety of our remaining staff and, frankly, the reputation of this institution." Sarah grit her teeth. "Chilton, you're a coward," she muttered under her breath, not bothering to transmit. His words, painting her as hysterical, infuriated her. They were designed to undermine her credibility, to make her seem irrational, even dangerous. He was sacrificing her to save face, to deflect blame from his own abject failure in planning. The rage, cold and steady, fueled her resolve. The power, which had been flickering erratically for the past half hour, suddenly died. The hum of the hospital's systems ceased. Silence, absolute and terrifying, descended, broken only by the frantic beeping of battery-powered monitors. For a heart-stopping moment, Mr. Abernathy's ventilator fell silent. Sarah's blood ran cold. The backup generator, a guttural cough, then a shuddering roar, and the emergency generator sputtered to life, casting the ICU in a stark, yellow-tinged light. But it wasn't steady. It coughed and sputtered, the lights dimming and brightening like a dying ember. The ventilator whirred back to life, but with a less consistent rhythm. Sarah knew the south wing generator was supposed to be the backup for the ICU, but Chilton had dismissed her concerns about its fault. Now, the main generator, stressed by the widespread power outage, was clearly struggling. "Damn you, Chilton," she whispered, rushing to Mr. Abernathy's side. The ventilator alarm blared. Low pressure. The generator was failing to provide consistent power. She immediately began manually ventilating him with an ambu bag, rhythmically squeezing the bag, pushing air into his frail lungs. One squeeze, two, three, four. Her arm began to ache almost immediately. She was his lungs now. Lily, startled by the sudden darkness and the wailing alarm, began to whimper. "Nurse Sarah? What's happening? It's dark." Sarah squeezed the ambu bag, then turned to Lily, forcing a calm smile. "It's okay, sweet pea. Just a little hiccup. The lights will be back on properly soon, just like a big loud blink. You're doing great, Lilybug." She hated lying, but panic was the last thing Lily needed. For nearly 20 minutes, Sarah manually ventilated Mr. Abernathy, her arm muscles screaming in protest. Each squeeze was a prayer, a defiance against the failing technology and the raging inferno outside. The air in the ICU grew visibly hazier, the smoke now undeniable, stinging her eyes and catching in her throat. The emergency lighting was barely enough. She used her personal headlamp, a powerful beam she kept in her bag for night shifts, strapping it on to better monitor Mr. Abernathy's subtle chest movements. Through the walkie-talkie, Rostova's voice was grim. "All units, fire has breached the eastern perimeter of Pine Ridge. Structures are igniting rapidly. The hospital is directly in the path. Estimated time to impact, 10 minutes." Sarah heard it, a stark, terrifying countdown. She was alone, in a darkening, smoke-filled ICU, manually breathing for one patient, comforting another, while an inferno bore down on her. The silence from the outside, from the authorities, was deafening. They had given up on the hospital and on her. Suddenly, a series of dull thuds echoed through the building. Not the sound of fire, but something else. Sarah peered through the smoke-tinged glass of the ICU doors. She saw the flash of an axe, then the splintering of wood. Firefighters. They were trying to get to her. But why now? Then she heard it over the walkie-talkie, the voice strained, almost pleading. It was a young firefighter, his voice cracking. "Marshall, are you sure we can't— Isn't there anything more we can do for the hospital? For Nurse Jenkins?" Rostova's voice was weary, resigned. "Negative, Miller. Command has ordered all personnel to establish a defensive line at Highway 12. The hospital is considered a loss. We have to preserve resources for what we can save. It's a tactical retreat. I repeat, all units, pull back from structure H1. It's a loss. I repeat, we are letting it go." Sarah's heart plummeted. The axe sounds had been for a final sweep, not a rescue. She was officially abandoned. The thuds and splintering stopped. The figures outside the door receded into the smoke-filled corridor. She was truly alone. A cold despair threatened to engulf her, but she pushed it back. She looked at Mr. Abernathy's ashen face, at Lily's trusting, sleepy eyes. No, not alone. She had them. And as long as they were breathing, she would be too. The rage that had fueled her defiance now mixed with a fierce, primal resolve. They might be letting the building go, but they were not letting her or her patients go down without a fight. The sound of the wind outside rose to a crescendo, mingling with a new, terrifying crackle. The fire was here. The hospital building shuddered as the inferno made contact. The roar outside wasn't just the wind anymore. It was the ravenous exhalation of a living, breathing beast. The crackle of burning foliage was replaced by the sickening crunch of timber and the groan of metal. Through the smoke-choked windows of the ICU, Sarah could see distorted, hellish reflections of the flames, orange and red, dancing against the glass, making the world outside a terrifying kaleidoscope of destruction. Embers, like tiny malevolent stars, landed on the roof, sizzling and sparking, threatening to consume everything. The emergency generator, her last, sputtering lifeline, coughed violently. The lights flickered, dimmed, and then died completely. The darkness was absolute, save for the weak, dying glow of the monitors and the beam of Sarah's headlamp, cutting a narrow swath through the thick, acrid smoke that now poured into the ICU, bypassing the failing ventilation system. The air was a heavy, suffocating blanket, burning her throat and lungs with every desperate breath. Mr. Abernathy's oxygen saturation alarms shrieked, a high-pitched, desperate cry for air. The ambu bag, despite Sarah's frantic efforts, felt less effective in the smoke-filled environment. His chest, which had been rising weakly, now barely moved. Lily, awakened by the alarms and the choking smoke, began to cough, a dry, rasping sound that tore at Sarah's heart. Her small body, so vulnerable in its traction, started to tremble. "Nurse Sarah, I can't breathe," Lily choked out, tears streaming down her soot-smudged face. "It hurts." Panic, cold and visceral, threatened to consume Sarah. She fought it back, her mind racing. She had prepared for this, as best she could. She grabbed a handful of surgical masks, soaking them in what little bottled water she had left. "Breathe through this, sweet pea," she instructed Lily, pressing the damp mask to the child's face, demonstrating how to breathe shallowly through it. She did the same for Mr. Abernathy, adjusting the mask over his mouth and nose, praying it would offer some minimal filtration against the toxic air. The radio, which had been mostly silent since Rostova's grim pronouncement, crackled to life, but it was just static, a mocking reminder of her abandonment. From the outside, there was nothing. No sirens, no shouts, just the terrifying roar of the fire. Rostova had ordered the full retreat, leaving the hospital to its fate. Sarah was well and truly alone. A profound sense of despair washed over her, a crushing weight that threatened to buckle her knees. She was losing the fight. The smoke, the failing equipment, the overwhelming force of nature, it was too much. She stared at the blackening windows, at the terrifying orange glow, and for a fleeting moment, she imagined giving up, succumbing to the heat and the smoke, letting the inevitable take its course. But then her eyes fell on Lily, coughing weakly through her mask, her small hand reaching out, instinctively seeking comfort. And on Mr. Taitian Abernathy, his chest barely moving, his life hanging by a thread that only Sarah could still grasp. They were counting on her. She had made a promise. And a Jenkins never broke a promise. No, not today. Not while she still had a breath in her body. From her command post, nearly a mile away, Fire Marshal Eva Rostova watched through powerful binoculars, her face grim, her jaw set. The Pine Ridge Community Hospital was a towering silhouette against a canvas of raging fire, its once pristine facade now engulfed in smoke and licking flames. Her team, exhausted and soot-stained, was valiantly holding a defensive line along Highway 12, trying to save the last row of homes. "Marshal," one of her lieutenants said, his voice heavy with resignation, "it's a loss. Nothing more we can do. The structure's compromised." Rostova nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on the hospital. She had made the right tactical decision, she told herself, sacrificing one building to save many. It was the logical choice. The responsible choice, but something gnawed at her. That nurse, Jenkins, so defiant, so absolutely convinced she was right. Then, through the binoculars, through the shifting veils of smoke and the blinding glare of the flames, she saw it, a tiny, defiant flicker of light in the ICU window on the third floor. Sarah's emergency headlamp. It was a single, unwavering beacon in the hellish darkness, a small but undeniable point of light. Rostova watched as the silhouette of the nurse moved, calmly, purposefully, checking on her patients, a solitary figure of unwavering duty in a building about to be swallowed by fire. A young firefighter, Miller, the same one who had pleaded for Sarah earlier, approached Rostova, his face smudged with ash but his eyes earnest. "Marshal, my mom. She was in the ICU here last year. Bad pneumonia. Nurse Jenkins, she saved her. Spent nights just sitting there, talking to her, making sure she ate. She's not crazy, Marshal. She's stubborn, and she doesn't give up on anyone." Rostova lowered the binoculars, a new understanding dawning in her eyes. Stubborn. Yes, that was it. Not hysterical, not reckless, but stubbornly, profoundly dedicated. She had seen countless acts of courage in her career, but this was different. This wasn't a firefighter running into a burning building because it was his job. This was a nurse, refusing to abandon her post, not for glory, not for recognition, but for the sacred, unyielding promise she had made to her patients. She looked at the blazing hospital, then at the exhausted faces of her crew. The fire was raging. The hospital was a death trap. Every instinct, every regulation, every tactical principle screamed at her to maintain the defensive line, to consolidate their efforts. But something inside her, something deeper than protocol, stirred. It was the spark of shared humanity, the recognition of a raw, unadulterated heroism that transcended rules and plans. She straightened, her gaze hardening, but this time with a different kind of resolve. "All right, listen up," she barked, her voice cutting through the crackle of the radio. Forget the defensive line for a minute. Engine 5, Engine 7, I need full water pressure. Cannons to the west wing of structure H1. We are going in. I repeat, we are going in. A ripple of surprise, then a surge of renewed energy, went through the exhausted firefighters. Marshal? One lieutenant questioned, confused. The hospital is a loss. Rostova fixed him with a steely glare. It's not about the building anymore, Lieutenant. It's about the people inside. And we don't leave our people behind. Not while there's still a flicker of light. Move! 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 The sound of massive fire engine engines roaring to life, the whine of high-pressure pumps, and the urgent shouts of firefighters cutting through the cacophony of the fire. The decision was made. The rules were broken, and a determined fire marshal, against all tactical logic, was leading her team back into the heart of the inferno, drawn by the last, defiant light in Pine Ridge. The roar of the fire was suddenly joined by a new, more hopeful sound. The guttural thrum of fire engine engines, the hiss of water, and the distant but undeniably approaching shouts of men. Sarah, slumped against the wall, coughing, her eyes stinging, could barely believe it. Had they come back? Or was it just another cruel hallucination brought on by smoke inhalation and exhaustion? Then, through the blackening glass of the ICU doors, a powerful beam of light cut through the smoke, followed by the sight of firefighters, their yellow coats glowing eerily, their faces obscured by respirators. They were wielding hoses, not just fighting the fire, but creating a watery shield, a desperate, courageous attempt to push back the inferno from the ICU wing. The sound of high-pressure water cannons against the blazing exterior of the hospital was deafening, a symphony of battle against the encroaching destruction. Within minutes, the reinforced doors of the ICU burst open, not breached by force, but flung open by two burly firefighters. They were Miller, the young man whose mother Sarah had cared for, and his older, seasoned partner. Their eyes, visible through their masks, were wide with a mix of relief and urgency. "Nurse Jenkins?" Miller's voice, though muffled by his respirator, was clear. "We're here. Are you okay? The patients?" Sarah, shaking with a mixture of fear and profound relief, pushed herself up. Her legs were shaky, her throat raw. "They're here. Mr. Abernathy. He's on the ventilator. It's failing. Lily. She's in traction, unstable. We need to move them carefully." The firefighters moved with incredible speed and precision. A specialized medical team, part of Rostova's unexpected return, followed close behind them. They had brought a portable, battery-powered ventilator, quickly swapping it out for the failing hospital unit. Another team carefully prepared Lily, ensuring her traction was stabilized for transport, using a customized, soft-sided stretcher that allowed her delicate framework to remain intact. They worked in the surreal, smoke-filled chaos, a testament to their training and their newfound mission. As they carefully wheeled Mr. Abernathy and Lily out of the ICU, the hallway was a hellish vision. Flickering flames in the distance, smoke so thick it was almost opaque, debris scattered everywhere. But the firefighters had cleared a path, a narrow tunnel of relative safety, leading them through the smoldering ruins of the hospital's main corridor. Sarah, still wearing her headlamp, walking beside Lily's stretcher, shielded the child's eyes from the terrifying sight. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Fire Marshal Rostova, her face smudged with ash, her eyes red-rimmed, but a look of profound respect in them. "Nurse Jenkins," Rostova said, her voice hoarse from shouting commands. "You did good. Damn good." Sarah just nodded, too emotionally drained to speak, a tear tracing a clean path down her sooty cheek. They emerged from the main entrance of the hospital into a landscape that was both terrifying and miraculous. The hospital, just moments ago a burning inferno, was now mostly smoldering, the flames significantly beaten back around the ICU wing. It was a testament to the sheer force and bravery of Rostova's team. Ambulances, their engines idling, waited in a cleared-out area. The air, though still thick with smoke, felt like a breath of fresh spring air compared to the stifling heat of the ICU. Mr. Abernathy and Lily were quickly loaded into a waiting ambulance, attended by a dedicated medical crew. Sarah was urged to get in as well, to be checked for smoke inhalation. As the ambulance pulled away, its siren wailing softly, weaving through the remaining fire crews, Sarah looked out the window. And then she saw it. Along the main road, stretching for nearly a quarter of a mile, every single fire engine, police cruiser, and emergency vehicle that remained in Pine Ridge had pulled over. They were not flashing their reds and blues in alarm, but had them silently rotating, a silent, swirling kaleidoscope of color in the fading light. Firefighters, their faces grimed with soot and exhaustion, stood by their trucks, helmets respectfully removed, their eyes fixed on the passing ambulance. Police officers stood at attention. A silent, profoundly powerful tribute. It was a hero's escort. Not for the fire marshal, not for the governor, but for a single, stubborn nurse who had refused to abandon her post. In that moment, the years of quiet dedication, the frustrations with bureaucracy, the fear, the isolation, it all coalesced into a wave of overwhelming emotion. Sarah, sitting in the back of the ambulance, watching the silent, solemn salute, finally let the tears fall, hot and cleansing against her soot-streaked face. It wasn't a victory cry, but a release, a testament to the power of human connection, of courage, and of the simple, unwavering commitment to care for others. Aftermath. In the days and weeks that followed, Sarah Jenkins's story became national news. Her defiant stand, her refusal to abandon her patients, captivated the country. The footage of the fire engines giving her a silent escort, captured by a news helicopter that had been covering the blaze, went viral, a powerful counter-narrative to the devastation of the Creek fire. Mark Chilton, the hospital administrator, attempted to save face, issuing a press release condemning Sarah's reckless insubordination and announcing her immediate termination for gross dereliction of duty and endangering patients. The backlash was immediate and fierce. The families of Mr. Abernathy and Lily, both stable and recovering in a larger facility, went public, praising Sarah's heroism. The firefighters' union issued a scathing condemnation of Chilton's actions, calling Sarah a true hero. The media, fueled by the rage-bait narrative of bureaucratic incompetence versus human courage, tore Chilton apart. Within a week, facing mounting pressure and public outcry, Mark Chilton was forced to resign in disgrace, his career in healthcare administration effectively over. A few weeks later, Sarah was back at a temporary clinic, set up in a nearby town for the displaced residents of Pine Ridge. Her license was not only intact, but lauded by the state nursing board. One quiet afternoon, Fire Marshal Eva Rostova walked into the clinic. She wasn't in uniform, but in plain clothes, looking softer, more approachable. "Nurse Jenkins," Rostova said, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "I just wanted to personally thank you. And apologize. I was wrong to doubt you. You showed me what true courage looks like, beyond the rulebook." Sarah, touched, simply nodded and offered a small smile in return. "We just did what we had to do, Marshal." Rostova extended a hand, and Sarah shook it, a gesture of respect and understanding passing between them. The story didn't end with a grand ceremony or a parade. It ended with Sarah Jenkins, the last light in Pine Ridge, doing what she did best, quietly, competently, and with unwavering compassion, checking on Mr. Tepsiversif Abernathy, who was now off the ventilator and slowly regaining his strength, and Lily, whose leg was healing remarkably well. She adjusted a pillow, offered a kind word, and continued her silent, profound work. The fire had taken much, but it had also revealed the enduring power of a single, steadfast heart, proving that true heroism often burns brightest in the darkest of times.